It's okay now. We can start.
Oh, sorry. I'm asking, are you going to play the song again or we can just start in?
Just you can go through.
Okay. All right. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Sasa Kainde. Welcome to Radio Ikamba. Today, we'll be talking about Yvonne IDAMANGE, a political prisoner in Rwanda who is going through quite severe torture in Rwandan prison system. Today with me, I have JJ Bosco with me. I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, thank you, Sasa Kainde. I also have to thank Radio Ikamba for giving us this opportunity to advocate for our friends Yvonne IDAMANGE Ibyamugwiza in order to be released from the Rwandan jail of Mageragere. And I'm pleased also to partner this show with you, Sasa Kainde. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'll give a very quick summary for those who might never heard of Yvonne IDAMANGE. She really came into Rwandan's consciousness during the COVID lockdown. Rwanda had one of the most severest COVID lockdowns, and many people were suffering indoors with no food, no resources. And as a woman from a more wealthy class, she came onto YouTube and social media on our screens. And she was really advocating for Rwandans to get more assistance, to get more leniency, and just for the police system to be much kinder around lockdown. But in her videos, she then started asking people to come together. Particularly, there's one time when she said, if we all come together and go to the presidential palace, we can make a change. Very shortly after that, she was then detained. And since then, she's been imprisoned, wrongfully imprisoned for about 2 or 3, is it 2 years now? It's coming up to 2 years or so. And we wanted to take out this time today to talk more about the specific things that are happening to her that are against the United Nations, what it's called. The United Nations has a basic principle for the treatment of prisoners. If you go into a previous show, we delved more in that. But IDAMANGE is not having her rights as a human being and a prisoner respected. And yeah, I'll let Jean-Jacques, if you have something to add.
Thank you, Sasa Kainde. Basically, you nailed it. This happened during the pandemic COVID-19 when there was a lack of leadership in Rwanda. People were suspecting the president was even not maybe alive. At the same time, there were draconians or just drastic measures that were taking place overnight. And the next day, the people just found themselves in a kind of despair. At the same time, IDAMANGE was saying that the Rwandan government led by RPF stand by Rwandese Patriotic Front, is against the youth because they don't give them a chance for employment. At the same time, she suggests that the current government were silenced and even killed what we call the Tutsi survivors. And finally, she was also saying that the Rwandan government has to make sure Rwandans in general enjoy the freedom of speech, enjoy the freedom of assembly, enjoy the freedom of or like in other countries. So because of that, the Rwandan government does not dare to kill or to imprison or to even force Rwandan citizens to exile. So very much you just said it. I had to only add those few lines. Thank you.
Okay. You bring up a really good point about IDAMANGE being a survivor of the Rwandan genocide. For those who don't know, Rwanda was in a civil war from 1990 to 1994. ending with a tragic genocide that was perpetrated primarily against Tutsis. So IDAMANGE is a survivor of that horror. And at the beginning of our show, we also had another man and another Rwandan activist by the name of Karasira, and he is also a survivor. And what's interesting about these two people is that they're slowly and slowly really showing the world the truth about this government that always claims that it came to Rwanda to save Tutsis, right? So RPF, the Rwandan political party in power, has claimed for 29 years to the world that they are the source of protection and life for Rwandan Tutsis. But when you start to look at the actions they do, particularly to people like IDAMANGE, you see the cruelty and the evil, and really many survivors or Abachikachumu have not truly rested. Jean-Jacques, before I give it back to you, I was just wanted to read out the things that they are doing physically to IDAMANGE, just for some people who are not aware, the type of torture that she's going through. And then perhaps you can add some things if you want.
Oh yeah, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay, so when we speak about torture in prison and her human rights not being respected, these are some of the points that are happening. So on a previous show, I was actually explained, I kept on seeing that her hair is being shaved with an unsanitary tools like just adult knife. But that situation happened, but it was done with other prisoners. So she is in a constant state of being watched, being tortured, and not just by prisoner guards, but by even other prisoners in the system. So the reason they're doing that is just not to torture her, but also possible infections, trying to get her more sick, etc. She's had to fight these judicial stagings by sham appeal trials. These trials are the orders of the Rwandan authorities, including as high up as Rwandan President Paul Kagame. All her children are banned on visits. Other visits are banned, including friends and other family members, since her incarceration more than 2 years ago. This is actually against one of the UN charters that says that you cannot put someone in solitude. So that is a really big one. She's also being emotionally and psychologically tortured through her children. Her children have had their schooling stopped, prohibited. Her oldest son was actually imprisoned under false charges that he was consuming or selling drugs. And this was just further familial abuse. But thankfully, he was released on March 24th, 23, alongside many of the prisoners that were released with Paul Rusesabagina. Another one is she has no access to her financial needs, which means she's blocked from buying basic necessaries. I remember first hearing of IDAMANGE because she was being chained foot and leg even during a woman's menstrual cycle. And so she has no access to toilets and other places to carry out her vital needs. So this is gross injustice, gross inhumanity on the part of the Rwandan government. And to do this not only on a woman and a mother of Rwandan society, but a woman who is a Tutsi survivor, who the regime claims they are there to protect. So Jean-Jacques, those were just some points that are happening to her, if you wanted to add on.
Oh, no, thank you, Sasa Kainde. You just said what we heard from credible sources, and they even added that those tortures are rendered by the Mageragere maximum security prison director, whose name is Augustine Wayezu, along with a prison's guard or prison's employee called Alphonsine Mukashaka, and what we can deduct from these, this is that even these two Rwandan correction or criminal justice officers are torturing IDAMANGE, Yvonne Iryamugwiza IDAMANGE. It's not, I believe, and that's what we have to deduct themselves. They are probably and for sure given the instructions by their boss, whose name is President Paul Kagame. We have to stress on that. So that's what I simply want to add for people to understand in which circumstances these tortures are rendered against IDAMANGE.
And you know, the more I learn about the Rwandan system, it really is just an open air prison, and it's becoming much sadder that that reality is hitting much more people. If I could just ask, turn the conversation a little bit around. In one of IDAMANGE's statements that got her thrown into unlawfully arrested, it's almost controversial in the outside community, because one of the things she mentioned, for example, is that she put doubt whether Paul Kagame himself physically is still not only alive, but he's still leading the country. But due to lack of, let's say, physical proof for such a large claim, many people have not ridiculed IDAMANGE, but really never speak about that message of her videos. For me, I believe she was trying to explain the situation as best and with the language she has. And for anyone who does look at the Rwandan government, pre and post COVID, there's been quite a lot of differences. So as an activist for IDAMANGE, how do you guys go about speaking about that one controversial factor?
No, thank you. Now, you know, Rwanda is a dictatorship. So under any dictatorship, you cannot, you don't see those regular institutions such as the parliament, that means legislative power. You don't see the judicial power. You only see the executive, and under the executive power, you only see one man, President Paul Kagame, for instance, in Rwanda. So this means that it's the only one man who does everything. He's a janitor, he's a prison guard, he's a president, he's soldier, he's almost he's a businessman. He runs everything just around the country. So that means talking about or challenging his leadership or something related to his power, you are just facing what we call a death sentence. That's what happens. By suggesting that the president may have died, that means because there was pure absence of the leadership. They couldn't see the president who they were seeing in the past running everywhere, just like any cowboy who runs a country. So that's how we did that. And then challenging that, stating that in Rwanda, it's just like a death penalty. So by facing that false imprisonment, what they did basically, they tried to do a sham trial, because she said, listen, the way you are conducting my trial, I don't see any justice is going to happen. I'm not going to attend. And then they just did what they call, they sentenced her for 15 years in prison, what we call just a sentencing in absentia. It means you are not there. They just default your sentence. And that's what happened. But they say, okay, listen, this woman is strong enough. For instance, there is all Rwandans from inside and outside, including also foreign citizens who are advocating for her release. Let's even make her more suffer by force imprisoning her son, her older son, who was at the age of maturity, 19 years old, so that maybe we can shift her way to challenge our government. That's how things are just like being, how do you call it? Being like done in Rwanda.
So I've noticed Rwanda, you know the metaphor of carrot and stick?
Oh, yes.
You know the metaphor of carrot and stick? They've been using the stick for 29 years and they don't know how to change their behavior. And so
No, let me stop you from there. This is called Rwandan government led by RPF, stand by Rwandese Patriotic Front, originate from the Ugandan army in 1990 when they invaded Rwanda. Lawfully or unlawfully, I use both, lawfully, unlawfully, or legitimately, because they had the right to come back to their country of birth, of origin. During the 4 years of war, what they did, it's horrendous. They wiped out people from the district or the then prefecture of Byumba and Ruwengeri, and because no one questioned when they took the power in Rwanda, they did the same. Remember what we call Kibeho massacre. Remember what we call invasion in refugee camps in the then Zaire, which is today Congo DRC, the Republic of Congo, something. And they came back by silencing what we call genocide, Tutsi genocide survivors, and no international community questions about those atrocities. Because of that, they believe they have a green fire, a green light to just do what it pleases.
Yes. That was a great point, because I do keep wondering to myself, I know that Rwanda is not just an ally, but a vassal of the Western nation, or I should say RPF. RPF is just a tool, a vassal of the Western nations. But as the years progress, their lack of interest in any human rights, I'm just surprised that the rest of the world allows them to keep using the genocide as a shield from their crimes, etc. But IDAMANGE, to be able to say those words while she's in Rwanda, that is quite a lot of bravery.
It was quite appealing to the fact in Rwanda, whether Tutsi or Hutu, even in the diaspora, whether Tutsi or Hutu, just arose as one to advocate IDAMANGE's release, which was not done in other circumstances. Yes, it was similar to that of Kizito, but in the case of IDAMANGE, every Rwandan from all the spectrum was ready to advocate for her release. So it was like an appealing statement, an appealing advocacy on behalf of IDAMANGE. So go ahead.
I see. I was going to say that, yeah, it takes quite a lot of bravery for her to have done what she had done in Rwanda. And I remember there's a certain point I always remember where she asked all Rwandans, let us meet at Urugwiro. Urugwiro is a presidential palace. And that call for, not for arms, but that call for protest within the country, for people to come together. I think the Rwandan regime didn't calculate how putting people like IDAMANGE, Karasira in those prisons, Mageragere, is actually bringing Rwandans of all backgrounds, all experiences together, because we can see the blatant human rights that are being violated in these survivors, because these are the true Abachika Chumu. And what I've started to notice is they are survivors who, through their experience, can still empathize with other Rwandans and can still say, hey, this isn't how I want my fellow Rwandans living, and I'm willing to fight for them. And that's a quality that had started to missing in Rwandan society. So IDAMANGE has brought a little bit more heart, a little bit more empathy in everyday Rwandans. So, and I hope that spirit she brought continues. What do you think about that?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that, Sasa Kainde. Remember, me, I live in Canada, and where I have like full of my rights, full of my freedoms. However, in Rwanda, when you say let meet at the Urugwiro place, at the Urugwiro Palace, what we call maybe the Rwandan
Parliament, yeah.
the Rwandan State House.
Yeah.
It's just threatens the government. They say, hang on a second, really, you are challenging our dictatorship by calling people to come. In other countries like Rwanda, remember during the the COVID-19 pandemic in Canada, truck drivers, they went to protest at what we call the office of Prime Minister Trudeau, and they lasted almost like days and days, and the people were even providing them food, give them like financial support under what we call GoFundMe, to say, listen, you have the right to question what the Canadian government is taking as measures during this pandemic. Let's go back to work. If people die, have to die, but other have to survive. In Rwanda, you're not gonna say that. While it's Rwandan citizens' right to question the action of the government at any time, at any circumstances, because the government, they pretend to be voted at 92% or 99% by those citizens, by those voters. So once you vote, you have the right to question the government, to question the member of parliament, to question any decision they are making either on your behalf or against you. So that's what is not going to happen in a dictatorship, especially like that. Has been rampant in Rwanda since 1994.
That's a really great point. In my viewpoint, I always kind of even struggle calling the RPF a government, or because they're really almost like people who are holding the country hostages.
They are like a mafia. A mafia runs
exactly.
Yeah.
So with that, anytime I hear people have expectations of that mafia, I'm sort of, I get it, but I'm also like, what do you expect from this is how they created the system to work. So for example, you mentioned that IDAMANGE was talking about the unemployment of youth. Is that by accident, or is that a part of the system? So it's so interesting in the way in all her points she was talking. I don't know if she understood how much she was challenging each component of the system, but it's quite amazing when once you go back and re-listen to what she's saying. She's really, really hitting at the core of the RPF system, challenging each fact.
Sasa Kainde, prior IDAMANGE's forced imprisonment, I was not involved in human rights advocacy, because myself, I was accused of having planned and perpetrated the genocide in Rwanda, and I was taking care of that case until everything was clear that I didn't take part in those atrocities. And then when I heard about IDAMANGE, actually it's my wife who told me that, you remember the lady who is broadcasting someone who is challenging the government has been forcibly detained and then forcibly arrested and then imprisoned. I say, hang on a second, and what's going on there? And they say, oh, there is even a group of people who have started this advocacy. That's how he joined, and because she was imprisoned on February 15th, 2021. I joined, I think, the next day on February 16th. So I was among of those who initiated it's that advocacy called Mouvement IDAMANGE in order for IDAMANGE to be released from that kind of dying prison of Mageragere. So that's how he joined, because her message was appealing to me. She said something, even in Canada, or even being in Canada, in France, in the United States of America, in Australia, or elsewhere there is human rights enforcement, we don't dare to say that. So for her to say that, being in Rwanda, it was first shocking, appealing, and very powerful. That's how many people joined. And that's the reason why even now when IDAMANGE movement heard that she's being under tortures, we had to go back and just call everyone to stand for her release, because she has been falsely imprisoned. Though what she said, it was within her right, 100%. But
it also shows you the
go ahead. I'm done.
It also shows you the weakness of that regime. All she did was speak. All she did was talk. And that talking itself was enough of a threat that they had to take her.
But remember, when you talk about the truth
it
does
it starts to run. So I think but I don't know how long they can keep this going, because this culture of impunity, this culture of this mafia culture, it really takes something away from individual human beings, but also it destroys a people's culture. So Yvonne IDAMANGE, I don't know if she realizes how much more spirit she placed back into Rwandans, how much hope she put back, and that's why many of us here.
Regardless, she's in prison. She's deprived from her freedom of movement, of going here and there. She's still a threat. She's still our hero. So that's why when people heard about again Mouvement IDAMANGE, like yourself, joined, because they say she's just advocating for the good cause of Rwandans. Even I'm telling you the truth, you know, you are within the movement. Citizens from other countries, they cannot stand how you can cut a woman's hair with unsanitary tools. And remember, people do not know that. They should know. Me, I'm from a low background. We have so many cases when even you touch a woman's hair, it's an assault without her willingness, without her permission. So if people Google,
it's 10 o'clock.
They could see so many cases has been put people in jail because of touching their hair as an assault, as a bad thing.
Especially when you have authority or power over the person. Like, you know, when prisoners are they're under the authority of the prison. So when you are in a place of power and use that power to torture and abuse others, it's just, yeah, you're so right. It's not understandable at all.
And Rwanda does not know human rights, including the right to not be tortured, including the right of a fair trial, including the right of freedom of speech, including the freedom of assembly. Means IDAMANGE has the freedom, has the right to have friends who can send her money in jail from inside Rwanda and outside Rwanda. That is a human right. However, Rwanda, a country that has ratified those treaties, cannot, yes, they cannot.
They're signed under them.
Yes, because they think they are above every country, they are above the law, simply because they were granted this kind of green light to use the genocide as a tool.
As a shield, yes. Well, you start to mention human rights, and I just wanted to end my part with finding that prisoners do even like human rights. There's human rights when you're freed, and there's even rights within imprisonment, and that I thought is amazing. But the one that I really like is all prisoners.
Sasa, me, I was what we call in Canada. I studied criminology, and then I worked as what we call a parole officer. A parole officer means someone who can take people in prison at the same time can release them. I was releasing them from the jail. So there is what we call correction directives or correctional directives that entail how a prisoner has to be guided or has to be taken care in jail, including basic medical visit, including basic needs, including basic rights, hours of sleep, and so on. So in Rwanda, it's like when they imprison you, it's like you are no longer a human being. That's just infringing all the human rights, including those prisons or those detention facilities guideline, and they do have that. And they do, if they pretend to have, let's say, a correction office or correctional office, it means a department that run jails, detentions, and prisons. They must have those rules and regulations. However, or unfortunately, they don't even comply with what they have written, and they claim to say, "Oh, these people from outside, they are just we are making noise for no reasons." No, it's our right to advocate for anybody whose human rights are infringed, either in Rwanda, in Uganda, or elsewhere. It's our right. So go ahead, madam.
All I would say is the first rule or the first law: all prisoners shall be treated with the respect due to their inherent dignity and value as human beings. This is just the most simple step that the Rwandan regime is incapable of even respecting. So I just wanted to mention that, regardless whether you're a prisoner or not, you still have inherent dignity and value as a human being. And so long as people like IDAMANGE are falsely imprisoned, people will always speak for them when their voice is taken from them. So Jean-Jacques, I just wanted to thank you so much for the discussion today and your time today. It was great once again speaking on Yvonne IDAMANGE and advocating for her rights. I just want to again remind everyone that we're on Radio Ikamba, and following our show will be a show called Makuru mu Rwanda, which means what's new in Rwanda. But before I sign off, I'll let Jean-Jacques.
Okay, so thank you, Sasaka. As you just said, you know what? If, for instance, you were allowed, because you are also of Rwandan origin, if you were allowed to go to Rwanda, by now your Kinyarwanda would have been much more than what you just said. So after this show, it's gonna be what Radio Ikamba call Makuruki mu Rwanda. That's okay.
I read it Makuruki.
Okay, it's correct. It's Makuruki. What's the news in Rwanda? Yeah, so that's the show that will follow after us. And then what I want to say is that, dear Rwandans, either those who are inside Rwanda or who live inside Rwanda or within Rwanda, and those who are outside Rwanda, what we call the diaspora, to really think twice how they are, what we call it, how they feel they are powerless. Because of that, they don't join people to advocate or to push the change in Rwanda. Because look, for instance, on March 24th of this year, the day the Rwandan government led by RPF released Idamange's son, who was facing a 1-year false imprisonment in jail for no reasons, and I believe they will compensate the guy. The boy. I mean,
Okay.
that was supposed. No, I believe that's my belief. Because if you are falsely accused and they pretend to release you, you should get a compensation in what we call under a civil wrong. Because that's what they did. It's what we call a civil wrong. It's a total of wrong. It's just a total of wrong. And everybody who has either been falsely jailed or imprisoned or detained should claim her rights by being compensated. I'm assuming Professor Bagina should be one of them, because if you guys, what I was mentioning, Rwandans inside from outside, you don't give pressure to this government, is gonna keep killing you, whether inside or whether outside of the country. Was my final remark.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And yeah, I always like to end it with encouraging more Rwandans, young Rwandans in the diaspora. Even if you don't know Kenya, Rwanda, it's all right. Your voice and just your ideas and your experience is needed in this fight for all of Rwandans to be freed. So thank you again, Jean-Jacques. Thank you,
for having me. Yeah, thank you.
Idamange jamubiza ntwari Rwanda, Idamange jamubiza ntuma ya rubanda, murekure Idamange, libere Idamange, Idamange jamubiza ntwari Rwanda, Idamange jamubiza ntuma ya rubanda, murekure Idamange, libere Idamange. Idamange iboneka rimwe, hashimwe Imana yakuduhaye, hashimwe ababyeyi bakureze, wavuze akari murore benshi twatinyaga kubera ubwoba twabitswemo. Idamange jamubiza ntwari Rwanda, Idamange jamubiza ntuma ya rubanda, murekure Idamange, libere Idamange, Idamange jamubiza